Lee is from Manchester in the United Kingdom and his home group is Spiritual Cartel, and he will be speaking on crossing the bridge to sober living for 40 minutes. Lee, thank you for taking your time to share your life with us today, and thank you for saying yes to God and Alcoholics Anonymous. It's truly an honour and a blessing to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Celine, for that beautiful introduction. And thank you to the service team for making this meeting possible. I feel very honored to be asked to speak here. Thank you, Tamara, for asking me to speak. When I logged on, I saw so many familiar faces that I've met on these meetings on Zoom across the almost running up to 2 years now that I've been in this program. So it's so nice to come on this meeting and to see old faces, and welcome to anybody new, no matter where you're at. It's a pleasure that you're here listening to me today. Another thing which I really enjoyed about the start of this meeting was I usually, before I'm about to do a main share, will begin my share with the set aside prayer, but no need because you guys already had that covered. So that was great. And the meditation is such a beautiful touch. I couldn't help but obviously have a musical mind. I have 2 degrees in that and used to be a music teacher. So I was just working out the chord progressions and the notes, and I'm probably gonna go and play that on piano after this because it was a beautiful piece of music. Um, so yeah, so that's my thanking you for being here today. Um, Now I wanted to start off this meeting with a quote. And my quote is this, and then I'll talk about why I chose my topic, and then I'll get into that. I'm from the UK, and in the UK, there's sometimes a slang term for alcohol, and we call it lemonade. So if someone's been drinking, they've been on the lemonade, etc. And there's that quote in life: when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. That is the last thing I need to make, being a recovered alcoholic, is lemonade. So I like this quote instead. When life hands you lemons, make orange juice and leave the whole world wondering how you did it. And that actually summarizes to me my journey with recovery, because nobody thought that I could get sober. I didn't think I could get sober. I literally made orange juice and left everyone wondering, how did he do it? And I never did it. I didn't do it. This is the point. God did it. God did for me and these 12 steps what I couldn't do for myself, what I was trying to do for years. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an AACV. So just so you know, I'm not just some guy that dragged in off the streets and said, can you share tonight? So I'm a member of AA. I'm in multiple fellowships, CA and CMA. And the reason I choose all 3 fellowships to do service in and to also, participate in is because all 3 of those fellowships all use the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. And all the 12 steps are outlined the same as they are in AA. So for me, I've not got anything against other fellowships that exist, but I like all of my meetings are all kind of linked because they all use the big book way. And that's the way that I know and I've been taken through. So I've been in recovery since August of 2023. However, relapse with an inability to surrender was part of my journey. And my final surrender sober date is 6th of January 2024. So, pretty soon I'll be 2 years. And that's why I chose the topic of, based on the design for living, like it says in the book, how can, at this point in my sobriety, how do I keep it fresh? I hear people after 5, 10 years, they go back out the door. I know that there is no cure for my spiritual malady, but there is a daily reprieve, which I get to do through the steps. So, yeah, my drinking career began in the year 2000. So I often joke that I went to a party in the year 2000 and didn't come home till 2024. But that is half true. That is pretty much what it was like for me. I am sponsored in true alcoholic fashion. One is just not enough. I have 2 sponsors. I have the original sponsor that took me through the big book and I finished my steps, who is now my sponsorship sponsor. So I call in when I've got, oh, I've got a sponsor with this issue. How do I navigate it? Do you have any additional support that you think I could? What meetings are good? And then as part of my healthy living, in a way to keep my recovery fresh, I decided that each new year of sobriety, I will redo my steps myself. Because it says in the book, you cannot transmit something that you haven't got. So how can I take on newcomers and take sponsees through the work, yet my recovery is not fresh? And I grow and change as a person. I develop. So that's why I am always on a quest for, you know, growth and connection with that higher power because, you know, the ceiling of the ego is just the basement to the higher self. So I'm always wanting to how do I get from that ego just upstairs to the higher self? And I'm not a perfect person. I'm not there all the time, but I have tools that I'm going to talk about which can help me to make that shift. So my second sponsor, I believe, is on this meeting right now. So I asked somebody else to take me through a second time, and I'm going through the Cameron F rapid way because I've only gone through the big book line by line way, which I think is brilliant. I'm not discounting that, but as I'm sure anyone that sponsors knows, sometimes we get what I would call critical newcomers. They need the steps quick. They need to go through it quick. They need to find the solution quick because you can learn it in a few hours, but it takes a lifetime to practice. And that's what this is. That's what I'm doing here still, almost 2 years on, is practicing daily. The minute I think I've sussed this program out and that I've understood everything is the minute I fail. Because for me to know that I know nothing, like it says in the set aside prayer, help me set aside everything I know. I've got a good basis to start with. I have open-mindedness, willingness, and honesty just within that prayer. So that's my recovery. I have sponsees, I do service on multiple meetings. I've spoke about that. And I love it. I absolutely love this stuff. In fact, I was on the phone to Tamara only this morning talking about it's so funny that I've gone from crazy wild nights, which we'll speak about, to now the most dangerous thing I do is a peppermint tea and a 5-pack of cookies from M&S on a Friday if I'm feeling a bit loose. And that's okay with me because I'm here and I'm alive today. This illness is no joke. Alcoholism is no joke. It's life or death. We're not the casual drinkers when you come to these rooms. We can't just stop and put it down. And I've lost multiple friends to this illness over the years. And another reason, and I couldn't get well for them and I couldn't put drink down for them. But now that I'm recovered, their spirits get to live on with me because they never got the chance. So that's another driving force now I'm well enough to keep going. So that's a bit about myself. So I just want to say as well, for me, I identify as an alcoholic massively. I never used to think that I was, but then I was drinking 2 bottles just before coming to recovery. I was drinking 2 bottles of wine a night, 5 nights a week. That's 10 bottles of wine a week, 40 a month. That's a lot. That's not a little tipple, that's a lot. But my spiritual malady manifests in every single way possible. I am a recovered alcoholic. I'm also a recovered drug addict, and I'm also a recovered sex and love addict. So there might be times during the show where I speak about those, but I'm here to speak about how I live healthily today. So there'll only be a little bit of that. I aim to make it more solution based. So that's a bit of a big intro about myself. But now, in order to understand this illness before coming to recovery, I always knew there was something wrong with me. I always knew that I partied harder than other people, drunk to black out, used to black out. And I knew I was not like everybody else that could go to a bar, get wasted, go home and be fine. I couldn't. I just couldn't stop. But I never really understood what alcoholism really was or what addiction really was. So I'm just gonna touch on that now. So if you were to look in the dictionary of what alcoholism is, it gives you a definition, something along the lines of excessive, often dangerous consumption of alcohol, leading to physiological, that's meaning like a bodily addiction, physiological or psychological addiction. So, you can become physically dependent and withdraw. That happened to me. I had to be hospitalized for that. And psychologically dependent. the bodily allergy, um, and the obsession of the mind. That's what those two things are, leading to addiction. So if you look at what is addiction, addiction to alcohol, substances, people, places, things, what is addiction? It says in, again, a dictionary definition of addiction would be a chronic relapsing condition or disorder. I'll say that again, a chronic relapsing condition or disorder. So if we just pick that apart, that tells me all I need to know about these illnesses. Chronic means it's only going to get worse, never better. And relapsing means it's going to keep coming back unless we do something about it. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but if you go to a doctor and they die, you've got a chronic relapsing condition, that doesn't fill me with much hope. But when it's described as a disorder, that's where I find a bit of hope. Because of what I know about disorder is things can move from the disorderly to the orderly. Look at, our conditions can change. It can be hailing down thunderstorm, and then it's beautiful, clear skies with sun. So I find my hope in the conditional disorder part of it. And what has helped me is the 12 steps, surrendering to a God of my own understanding, a higher power of my own understanding, sorry, that I do call God, half jokingly called Zeus. I also have a Zeus tattoo on my hand, but that's because as very Mancunian from Manchester, England, that I am with my accent and my behaviours, I actually am a bit of a spicy mix. I have Cypriot, French, Irish, and English blood, mostly Cypriot, hence why I'm 37 with still a decent hairline. So thank you to my grandma for that. But yeah, the reason I have Zeus on my hand, I got this in recovery, is because, and I have my home group tattooed on my other hand, which is Spiritual Cartel and the AA symbol. The reason why I have these, I'm always looking at my hand. If ever I get stuck in self, I look down and I realize the things that are going to keep me well. Staying within that triangle, unity, service, recovery, attending meetings, doing service in my home group, and number one, God. Okay, it's Zeus. I don't pray to Zeus, but it's half joking because the Greek Cypriots would have believed in ancient mythology. But it's whatever works for you. So that is the definition of the conditions. So how did that manifest for me? I'm just going to give you a little bit of what led me to that. Led me to these rooms, a little bit about my life. So one thing I've noticed from being in these rooms is I used to believe that I was an alcoholic because of the trauma that I've been through in life. Yet attended a few meetings and I spoke to a few people. And there's some people that would state that on paper, they've not had particularly adverse life experiences, no divorced parents, no poverty growing up, good jobs, good family, good relationships, yet they still hit the bottle just like I did. And then I look at people like my grandmother that I mentioned earlier, who has had a hell of a lot of adverse life experiences, yet has never turned to alcohol, substances, escapism in the way that we do in these rooms. So it got me thinking that perhaps we are born with the alcoholic mindset and it's just exasperated by, PTSD, adverse life experiences. And if you didn't have any trauma before you started drinking, before you became an alcoholic, you definitely will have by the time you end up in these rooms. Being a full-blown alcoholic, a full-time user or abuser of substances will give you trauma if you didn't already have it. So anyone that's made it to this meeting today, if you've got 24 hours, less than 24 hours, 20 years of sobriety, well done. We're here today and your voice is very important. Your story is very important. I went to alcohol recovery. I went to hospital. I went to drugs counseling and nothing ever helped except these rooms because I got identification when I, spoke with professionals who had never really even drunk in their life or never smoked a joint telling me about relapse prevention. I just didn't buy it. When I sat in these meetings and I listened to people talking about, I've been to prison. I used to be a dealer. I was the landlord of a pub and I drank all the stock dry. I've lost my children, but then I went to rehab and they're like, but I'm now 5 years clean. I'm a CEO of a company. I've not touched a drink in 5 years. I sponsor 30 people. I run this meeting. I'm on the area district. I'm like, wow. It was the people in these rooms that kept me coming back that made me want it. I want what you have. And I was willing to go to any lengths to get it. So thank you to all of you, because if it wasn't for you lot, it would have never been encouraged enough to get into the book and to start doing my steps. Because certainly wasn't the steps, and it certainly wasn't God that I was interested in at the start of my program, but it definitely is the thing I love the most about it now. So I spoke about being born with an alcoholics mindset. Now, alcoholism is the disease of more and now. We want more of it, and we want it now. We want that instant gratification. And, one drink is never enough. And I think for me, it manifested as a child because there's this infamous story that my dad tells where I am like, I'm the eldest of four siblings. And when the Easter eggs were lined up on like a couple of days before Easter on the side, he always said, you always knew the Lee tried to get to it because there wouldn't be one egg missing. Like my younger brothers and sister would steal one egg. There'd be a little piece from all four eggs missing. And that's how you knew it was Lee. And it makes me laugh because I didn't know what alcohol was, didn't know what drugs were. I was a little child. But I was not satisfied. I don't have a recollection of doing this, but I definitely know that's what I would have done. Like, no, I might be missing out if I don't try a little bit of that egg. Disease of more and now. It was playing out as a child. So it's only inevitable that I was going to go on to have this big drinking career for 24 years and run my life into the ground. So my early life, for me, I was in a single parent family. My parents got divorced very young. There was a lot of violence I'd seen growing up. I'm adopted by my dad. I don't know my biological father, and I got presented when I was 7 with a birth certificate with a different surname on. And that gave me a whole identity crisis. I was like, who am I? I don't know. It's a lot for a 7-year-old child to process because when you're that age, what is it? What's your biggest problem in the day? It should be whether or not you're getting milk and cookies at break. You're 7. That should be the biggest problem in your day. And a few years later, my granddad passed away in a plane crash. He worked in Libya, which is quite a tragic way to die and very sudden. 4 months after that, I was sexually assaulted by a family member in front of his picture. So all this stuff happened by the time I was 11. And so I felt like in some ways I was forced to be a man whilst I was still a boy. And that is where my sickness really started. I began escaping through drinking, first of all. I started drinking copious amounts of alcohol at a very young age, vodka straight through a straw because we realized drinking it through a straw gets you more drunk. And, you know, okay, yeah, there was sometimes going to parties, being teenagers, and it was fine, but I was different. I was drinking to blackout, and then I was taking substances as well, anything, and then I started having consensual sex from a really young age because being sexually assaulted at a young age normalizes sexual experiences from a young age. And I was basically living like I was a 30-year-old whilst I was 12, 13, 14. And I didn't see that there was a problem with it at the time. I just thought this is normal. If anything changed the way you felt, I felt alcohol, drugs, people. I was into it because I couldn't cope with what I felt from when I was younger. And I spoke about being a musician. The piano only got me so far with escaping that. I needed to just not feel physically numb that. Um, so, I continued. I don't want to share too much of the war stories. I spoke about some traumatic stuff, so apologize if it triggers anybody. But yeah, so this is, like I said, this is a chronic progressive illness and it only gets worse. So I'm not too sure at what point I made the transition from just partying to drinking being a lifestyle, but it was sometime in my 20s. And in my 20s, I was at university, I was going to raves, I was going to bars 5 nights a week, and a lot of it was fun. A lot of it was fun, but then I stopped going to the bars because I wanted to sit and drink alone. I stopped sharing alcohol. When you pour your friend a glass of whatever, I stopped doing that. I started stealing other people's alcohol. I started stealing alcohol from I was about to say people's family, from my family, when I'd go home and replace it with water, and they knew, and things like that. And people were like, we don't see you out anymore. So I stopped socializing. Essentially, if you think about a pub or a bar, it's supposed to be a place we go socially to enjoy drinking with people. The normal people, the muggles of society, if anyone's seen Harry Potter, they can do that, and that's okay for them. Um, but stopped being sociable. It started being isolation. I started getting the jitters, as it talks about. I was mentally befogged. I was withdrawing, and I needed to always be intoxicated. I needed to be lit all of the time. And it got worse. I always told myself that I'm not like these other alcoholics. I'm not like these other addicts, because I'm smart. I'm at university. You'll never catch me doing X, Y, and Z. It was only a matter of time before I'd run out of money. I was selling my belongings so I could fund all my habits. I overdosed a party and blacked out. So I was mixing, alcohol with substances is never, ever a wise idea. And I was sexually assaulted again as an adult from being put under on certain things at like a party. This was only a few years ago, and that sent me spiraling. This is before recovery. It sent me spiraling again, and there was a police investigation. And I just want to touch on this because I know I've mentioned it a lot, but I think it's very important to say. I hear a lot of people in the rooms when we're talking about the stuff we've been through, talking about consent, and people say, "Well, I never said no." You cannot consent to something unless you say yeah. Let me make that clear. Consent only occurs when you say yes. So I'm going to tell you what I consented to before I found the big book, God and These Steps. I consented to mental health issues. I consented to blackouts. I consented to owing people money, to hospital visits, to police involvement, to violence, to damaged relationships. The list is endless until I didn't consent anymore, until me picking up that first drink was not a choice. And I couldn't, but through doing the steps and doing this work, I'll tell you what I say yes to now. I say yes to peace. I say yes to serenity. I say yes to healthy relationships, to healthy boundaries, to helping others, to financial, emotional, physical security. I can go anywhere in the world now because I have God with me and I'm recovered. So that is what I consent to today. And it is a choice. I choose every day to say yes to this, to allow the power of God to work in my life and to be of maximum service to society where I can. Obviously, I'm just this one small guy. That isn't meant from an egotistical point of view. So I have to smash my ego because when Lee wants to do what Lee wants to do, it goes not well. So I want to now talk about recovery and then I'm going to talk about what my topic was. So it got worse and it got worse and it got worse. And then the year that I came into recovery, post this assault and things like that, I'd been um I'd been sent to a mental hospital because I completely lost touch with reality and I was physically withdrawing. So I had to be weaned off. And I'm just going to say this now. It says very clearly in the book, if we've got anybody that is like physically dependent, and whether you're working with alcoholics or people on substances, they have a physical dependency, it says they must seek the proper appointed authority because people can die from withdrawing from alcohol, from just completely cold turkey it, depending on where you're at. So please, I urge you to work with medical health professionals because that's what happened to me, and I cannot thank them enough. Until we're not jittery and the brain is not befogged, that is super, super important. So I just want to say that. So I got that help in hospital. But just before I came to recovery, I'd lost everything. I quit my teaching job because I couldn't cope with the stress of it and I was leading a double life. And then I didn't have another job to go to. I just said, oh yeah, I'll find one. I didn't. So I was hitting the bottle more and more and more. And I was behaving toxically in relationships. My family didn't want anything to do with me. I'd been evicted by police for property damage on a drunken spree in a really nice home I was living with a very tolerant landlord that lived with me, a very nice guy, and I made the life hell because of my illness. And I'd lost everything. It says everywhere in the book, that we have to be broken down in order to have the solution. The bigger the problem, the bigger solution. And that was it. And I came to my first meeting because I was due to go into rehab and I bottled it because the scared guy that I am, I was afraid, and I've got nothing against treatment centers, I think they're amazing. I was afraid that when I go in, I'm in this little bubble and life's gonna be great. And when I come out, my life's just in the same shatters that it is before I go in, before I went in. So I chose at the last minute not to, and I had a support worker, and he said, "You need to find a meeting, or you'll just die," basically. So I did a founder meeting and I went, and everyone at the meeting, this is what I spoke about before, and so they kept coming back to use everyone, all the women wearing really nice jewelry, had beautiful hair, smiling, laughing, joking, all the men, had muscles, and like everyone had their own teeth and white teeth and were really nice, and the skin looked amazing and they smelled good. And they were really kind and they were like, we'll take you out for pizza. They're saying all this stuff to me, like, keep coming back and surrender to a higher power. And I was like, what is this? I thought it was a cult to begin with. It's not. It's a beautiful bunch of people that just want to help others for free. And I didn't quite get it. But when I heard people talking, like I said, about their stories, where alcohol had taken them, where disease had taken them, and how they got well, that's what I wanted. And so I kept coming back, as it said. I got a sponsor, I got a big book, and my life changed. So that is everything leading up to this, right? So that was my living before. It's important that I mention that because my topic was healthy living. I'm pretty sure I don't need to go around and ask, raise your hand if you think the way I was living was unhealthy. That's how I was living. That is a very unhealthy way to live. I'm now going to talk about how I worked each step and how I get to keep this healthy way of life for myself, and why, if it's possible for me, it's possible for anyone, because I was the hopeless, down and out alcoholic addict you will ever find. So I got a big book and I got to work with my sponsor, who's now a sponsorship sponsor. So step one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. Well, I don't need to tell you about my step one experience because you just heard it. My life was unmanageable. I was powerless. I couldn't stop. And, I learned something in step one because it says in the book about, the difference between a heavy drinker, a moderate drinker, and a full-blown alcoholic. And I think of it something like this. A heavy drinker could stop if he would, meaning he could stop if he wanted to. If he would stop, he could. An alcoholic would stop if he could. Is that right? Sorry, a moderate drinker could stop if he would. An alcoholic would stop if he could. Yes, sorry, I was just checking that. I've had a bit of like mental dyslexia there. So yeah, if I could have stopped, I would have tried everything. Counseling, therapy, changing who I drunk with, where I drunk, when I drunk. Like, yeah, if there's a new method to trying to get like sober on your own. I've done it. It did not work for me. This is what works for me. So I never had a problem with my step one experience, but I have to say there's two steps that keep me well on a daily basis, and these are the most two important for me. Different steps are important for different people. So this is just my experience. But in order to keep living healthily every day, I have to always have a solid step one. Because if I've not experienced step one at a visceral level in every fiber in my body, none of the other steps will work. I will always reverse. When people relapse, they go back to drinking, they reverse the steps. And I'll talk about that as well. They reverse the steps and I'm right back to one. So I have to always remember I am powerless to the first drink. And I just want to state this as well. I've always identified as an alcoholic, yes, but I've spoke about being a drug addict. I have to tell you something. Whenever I relapsed, and I know this to be certain, it was never drugs that took me back out. It was the alcohol that took me back, that led me then to the drugs. So this is why I love coming to AA meetings because you guys get it and I get to talk about it a bit more of my experience with that. So I know I'm powerless to the first drink and drug as well. If I put a drug into my system, I'd be off to the races as well. But it's the little inhibitions lowered with that liquid devil that will always send me back out. So I'm comfortable with my peppermint tea and my herbal teas and my Coke Zero. That's fine. Um, so I always have a very solid step one because I know if I don't keep that, if there's a moment when I ever think, oh, I can have a little drink, then that's when I'm going to lose everything. And the other thing that keeps me well is what I'm doing right now. Step 12, carrying a message, or hopefully carrying a message. You might not have got a message from this, maybe you do, I'm very sorry. But I giving back, service, sponsoring. I just want to say something quickly about step 12. I know I'm working my way through the steps here, and I've not gotten to two yet, but the most two important ones for me on a daily basis is 1 and 12. Because without that, it says when we sponsor people, you need to let your sponsees know that they may be doing for you, it's doing more for your recovery than it is maybe for them. And that is so true. If you're lucky enough to have found a sponsor who's armed with the fact, who has a solution, who's willing to give that away to you for free, that's gold. They're giving you gold. Please take it. Please do the work. Because if you don't do the work, you're impacting their ability to be able to do their step 12 and their program. You're impacting their ability to give you gold. And I'm saying this from a person who relapsed 4 times my sober date whilst I was in recovery, and I relapsed on step 4. When I get to step 4, I'm going to talk about that because that's a very important step when it comes to going back out the door. But yeah, 1 and 12. And also, I just want to say to any newcomers, don't think that you have to be on step 12 and have gone through steps 1 to 11 to do step 12. You know, when you raise your hand, hi, my name is, and I'm on day, talking about the share in a meeting, you're doing step 12. Step 12 is carry the message to other alcoholics. I sometimes have had such a profound experience from a 3-minute share than I have listened to someone like me waffle on for 45 minutes. 100 million%. You may be saving a life with your words, and no one is better qualified. It says in the book, no greater work can be achieved than when one alcoholic sits down with another alcoholic. And that is so true. So you do in step 12, everyone, all the time by carrying a message. So I just want you to know that if you're one of those people that's like, I don't know where I'm at with my steps. So step 1, fine. Yeah, okay, sign me up. I think I can do this. And then with step 2, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Well, I always knew that there was things greater than myself. As big as my ego was, I are, the moon, the stars, the planets, this country, my neighborhood, people, prestige, everything. There's things greater than me. But my favorite thing in this is it says came to believe. This is the growth step for me. No one's saying you must believe in a power greater than yourself right now for step 2. It says came to believe, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but it will always materialize 100 million%. And for me, my experience with this, it was just easy for me to do because I already prayed. Obviously, like most alcoholics, God, help me in a mess, please help me. I prayed for selfish reasons. But one thing I know about my relationship with God is you can't send God to voicemail. Sorry, and you can't actually send God to voicemail. The higher power is always working in your life, whether you're tapped into that energy or not. So that gives me a lot of solace that, you know what, how do I tap into that energy? Because if I'm aware something's around me, I would really like to work with it. Step 3, this step for me is about surrendering or being compliant, and I'll explain that. So made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. So I had to ask myself with this step, am I in a state of surrender or am I in a state of compliance? Because if I'm compliant with something, I am literally saying, yes, okay, I'll do that because I'm probably going to get something out of it. Okay, yeah, I'll do the dishes because I might be able to ask you to take the bins out. Okay, yeah, of course, I'll stay 10 minutes extra late at work because I can ask them to, can I come in 10 minutes later tomorrow? That's compliance. But to fully surrender is to know that regardless of what outcome happens, I'm okay with it. And there's so much power in that. But it is really difficult because we're human beings. We love control. And I don't know about you, but alcoholic that I am, I love to control every situation and make it Lee's way. So I had to work on step 3 still to this day a lot in order to live healthily. So step 4, this is the one I relapsed on a lot. We made a fearless searching moral inventory of ourselves. If you're not honest and you're not thorough enough with this step, which I wasn't, then that's why I wrote down every single person on my step 4, and I wrote down the name of the family member that abused me when I was a kid, and I didn't write anything else to do with them. And after my Fourth, going back out the door, I sat and I looked on step four and I looked and I thought, you're still allowing this person to have control over your life. They're still affecting you and your recovery. Get it done. And I prayed and I got it done. And I've not picked up a drink or a substance or acted out in any kind of um, negatively impacting my spiritual wellness way with people since. So if you're on step four, get to work. It actually says we make haste. Get to work, right? Don't waste time. Um, so yeah, because I know it's not worth it. You get the freedom. If I could tell my, everything happens for a reason and in God's timing, but if I could tell my younger self, like, just get it done because your life will be amazing. You'll net the obsession to drink and use will be, removed. And it was. My psychic change occurred on four. And that's another thing. Do you want the psychic change or do you just want to do the steps 1 to 11 and not carry the message and be what I would call a recovery thief? Because if that's the case, that's not what this is about. I want a whole psychic change. My mind was unclean. Someone said to me once, is this program not like brainwashing? Couldn't your brain use a bit of a wash? My brain could use a wash if I could take it out and put it in the washing machine and put it on a nice little 90 degree and get it out fresh and clean, pop it back in my head. Then that is 100 million% what I would do. But that's what these 12 steps have done for me. So yeah, wash your brain because mine definitely needed washing. Um, five, obviously, it ties in with four. When I read it to my sponsor, is when I said the psychic change occurred. Reading that out loud to God and to someone trusted, usually sponsor. I love that. And I will be forever grateful. I still thank my sponsor today. It's been 2 years. Thanks for all the work you did. It's like, no, God did it and you did it. I'm like, no, but you showed me the way. You gave me that gold that I spoke about. 6 and 7, I love these two and they're tied in together. These steps help me to live healthy on a daily basis because I am human, I'm flawed, I can be stuck in defects, but I try not to get too stuck in the character defect side and I try to always pray for the asset. So I'll be like, God, please help me to be more humble, kind, tolerant. I'm always trying to be more in 7, even when I know I'm in 6 because I feel like for me, it's positive law of attraction by focusing on the corresponding asset more than praying for this is my own way I work my recovery. But rather than praying for X, Y, and Z defect to be removed, I just pray for the corresponding asset of that to be more of. So for me, I'm already in a positive mindset about it. Um, Obviously, when I came to step 8, writing the list of people we'd harmed, that was very easy for me to do. I had about 60 people on it, and I'm still working on that step. I'm still on step 9, constantly making amends to people, not just the on the spot ones, but there's some big ones that I've yet to make still, and they're not on the never list. They're on the will make. I'm still getting around to it, but I've made about 25 of the most biggest important ones, and it was something so freeing when I did that. And by the time you're on step 8 and making that harmless, most of your work's done when you just assess your step 4. But my best friend, died from this illness 3 years ago, and we were friends since we were teenagers. And I did a graveside amends, and I wrote down the amends, and I've not yet, still haven't delivered it. Right? I speak about this a lot. I need to actually get on with this. I haven't delivered it, but I've wrote it. But the way I want to deliver it, I want to write on one of those Chinese lanterns and go to where we've planted a tree with its ashes and read it and just set it off into the sky. Um, it's never about saying sorry, it's about how can I make it right. Besides living healthily on a daily basis, I want to be a living amends to everyone I've ever hurt and to my former self to make peace with that inner child and be like, listen, that little Lee that got abused, that went through all this stuff, I get to metaphorically carry him through life because guess what? I'm getting carried by God. So it's cool. We're both taken care of with that. Um, Nightly inventory. I used to be terrible at this. I set myself a cheat. I set myself, again, how can I keep my recovery fresh? I set myself a challenge with my sponsor at the moment. I went, I'm going to do a 30-day challenge of inventory because I'd only do it when I needed to. Lee's will again. When there's a big enough problem, I'll do it. But then I see these people that really good at their program, like I do it every night. So I thought, right, I do gratitude every day. And if you make something habitual, it will eventually become a ritual. And you cannot spell ritual as spiritual without the word ritual. So just keep doing the same of the good things that work, and you might come to believe that a power greater than yourself can restore your sanity by doing those things. So I did a 30-day challenge in August, and I've just kept doing nightly inventory since, and I love it. Prayer and meditation, step 11, is so important to me. That's what helps me to live healthily. Prayer for me is asking the questions of God, and I pray for others. I don't pray for myself. And I know if I need prayers for myself, I can ask you lot because you need the prayers, you need the practice, and I need the prayers. And I say that to other people, and they say, "We pray for me." I'm like, yeah, I need the practice, and you need the prayers. So of course, um, meditation is where I'm asking for the downloads, the answers, and they usually come to me. I was rubbish at it first. I just sit in silence for 10 minutes, leading me to step 12, which is carrying a message, speaking today, helping sponsees. But there's something I want to just end this on because I actually said it at the start of the meeting, but it wasn't on record. In terms of healthy living, earlier this week, this is the beauty of this program, right? My relationship that I was in for the last year, which I got into sober and recovered, came to an end. It ended really healthy. And I think that's because of this program. This was the healthiest relationship I've been in and was a gift from God. There was no violence, there was no deceit, manipulation, cheating, there was no police involvement, there was no alcohol, there was no drugs. And that's why it ended so healthily as well. But I am in the no matter what club. No matter what happens, I do not pick up a drink or a substance. This year, two out of four of my parents, got two beautiful step parents, got diagnosed with cancer. I didn't drink. My grandma died. I didn't drink. My relationship just ended. I didn't drink. I would have gone to that shop or gone to that bar just because it was raining on a Tuesday. So I'm going to end it with this. We're alcoholics, yeah. We love a happy hour. I'm asking you though, why have one happy hour when you can have 24? God bless. My name is Liam from Manchester. Thank you very much for letting me speak this evening.